I was actually going to school for hotel restaurant management, and one of my restaurant patrons was the CEO of Merrill Lynch. And I'm sitting with him one night after a party that I helped him cater, and it's about 3 in the morning, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Bradley, what would it take for me to work downtown on those computers? I hear all the guys at the party complaining that nobody can get or IBM can't get things working. I'd like to take a crack at it." And he goes, "Man, I like you. You're a hard worker. You can start in 2 weeks." So the
Oh,
lesson there, yeah, at the Board of Trade. So the lesson there is, if you want something, ask for it. That's probably ask and get. I teach that to my kids. I teach that to everybody in the world. So it's like pass that on, right? So if you
yeah.
don't ask, you don't get. Fernhill will create what's called a SPV, a special purpose vehicle, allocate $10 million out of that raise, put it out to their market in the public. You now could get into that alternative investment in another way with tokenization. And they have a real world asset platform. And with their tokenization, you can even use cash. That's good cardio. So
Oh,
that
yeah, it
means at
is.
least you have good cardio, you can run from the person that's attacking you. So
Hi everyone, welcome back to the AI Alpha podcast. Today we have incredible guest. He's not your traditional investment banker. He started his career in 1982 in the server room of the Chicago Board of Trade, managing the night of and digital plumbing for Merrill Lynch. He went on build the early IT infrastructure for giants like Sears before turning his focus to capital market. Today he is the chief revenue officer of Regiment Securities, where he has leveraged data and automation to raise over 2.5 billion in capital. Please welcome Dean DeLisle. Dean, before I jump into anything, I saw some incredible thing about you. You and your son both having third degree black belt in Taekwondo. Is that true?
yeah, we did 17 years together and
Ah,
still practice, mostly in the gym rather than the dojo. But yeah, we did 17 years and all mixed martial arts. So not just Taekwondo, it was about 7 different martial arts that they mixed into it. So,
wow, that's incredible. I do jujitsu. My son do jujitsu, but I do kickboxing. So hopefully
oh,
one day I will join jujitsu with him.
that's good cardio. So
Oh
that
yeah, it
means
is.
at least you have good cardio, you can run from the person that's attacking you. So
Absolutely. That's my goal. So, Dean, I want to start with your background because it's a unique for a CRO. You are managing night operations for trade clearing early 80s and then spent 90s installing the first wave of CRM. And you have seen the plumbing for the industry evolve for 40 years. My question is walk us through your journey and why private capital now?
yeah, great question. So it's interesting. And I wrote about this in my book. So if anybody gets on Amazon, just punch in my name, and I write about this in my book because it's such a fascinating story. And I was actually going to school for hotel restaurant management. And one of my restaurant patrons was the CEO of Merrill Lynch. And so coincidentally, I grew up and my dad was in the Air Force, so we always grew up on technology. He taught us BASIC and all kinds of software languages, and grew up on radio transmissions and things like that. So when I was at Purdue, I was hacking in the computer lab, so I could figure things out. My brain was just wired that way. And I'm sitting with him one night after a party that I helped him cater, and it's about 3 in the morning, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Bradley, what would it take for me to work downtown on those computers? I hear all the guys at the party complaining that nobody can get or IBM can't get things working. I'd like to take a crack at it." And he goes, "Man, I like you. You're a hard worker. You can start in 2 weeks." So the
Oh,
lesson there, yeah, at the Board of Trade. So the lesson there is, if you want something, ask for it. That's probably ask and get. I teach that to my kids. I teach that to everybody in the world. So it's like pass that on, right? So if you
yeah.
don't ask, you don't get. So anyway, fast forward, I wind up on the midnight shift and they couldn't get the computers to transmit trades. And this is when 1982 was actually the first internet. I always joke before Al Gore invented it, so it was the first internet. So we were transmitting trades, or they were wanting to transmit trades, and we were on punch cards back then. You think
Mhm.
in writing orders and the traders on the floor who are a lot of my partners today. And then we had to process all those. And so they couldn't get the transmissions to work. So then we came on and we were just operators. We were in our 20-year-old operators just coming in to figure it out. And they had these ginormous books. I don't even have books in my office that size anymore. I may be like, it'd be like, stacks this high.
It's
And they're
like
going through manuals and they sent us
manual
to IBM
instructions. Yeah.
school. And even the IBM guys were trying to figure it out. So lo and behold, I mean, when we got there, the machines were in shrink wrap. That's how new it was, right?
Oh.
So then when it lit up, it was amazing, and so I'm just pleased to be part of that. But then you see where it's gone from that moment, and it was funny because the first messages, you're like, someone responded on the other side. I'm like, hello, is anybody there? Kansas
The-
City, are you there? Cincinnati, are you there? London, are you there? And boom, they would go, oh, I'm here. Are you there? And so everybody was like surprised on that first message.
Oh, that's incredible. I've
Yeah, it
seen
was.
in the movie something like that in the NASA movie. I don't recall the
Oh
name.
yeah, I just watched that one. Yeah, when the ladies were the computer.
Exactly.
Yes, I could
Uh,
that I watched that over and over and over again. Hidden Figures.
he-
Yes,
Really?
and that was the same thing. She just read the manual and figured out and switched a few things and got it worked.
Absolutely. When you describe it, I imagine, oh, yeah, this is a hidden figure seed.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
then I became a programmer because they made more money than operators.
Mm,
So then I learned how to program in about 4 different languages: COBOL, Basic Assembler,
mm,
Fortran, RPG. And that really got me into, after I left Merrill Lynch to start my first tech company,
mm,
building tech and platforms for companies. And this is way before the internet because, fast forward, I went to an accounting firm when they were first hiring tech companies to come inside as management advisory. I had a couple of, at the age of 23, I had my first tech company, and then I went to go work so I could learn more accounting in the accounting firm. So it was sort of a give and take
mm.
partnership. So I was just blessed to be, at the right time in the right place and
Right
and
place.
and just also know to ask, right? You don't get to the
Absolutely.
next.
I think that might carry you. Back then, you asked for it, you got it, and now we are doing the same thing. Pitch your deal and get the money, right? I think it might be a similar experience for you now. So you've been there, huh? And if you see the private capital and private equities landscape today, do you feel we are at a similar inflection point to when you were installing those networks? Is the AI is the new infrastructure that finally modernized the back office of private capital?
Yeah, and I even think before AI, I think it was more, you think about, and like I said, the internet, but when the Jobs Act and things like that were empowered out there, it allowed us, with Reg D, 6Cs, Reg CFs, and Reg As, we were able to start soliciting on the internet for capital. And the good news is digital marketing was well progressed by then, but the data was still sort of clunky, because you're trying to do ad campaigns and build an audience, and is all the data really good, and so there's a lot of testing that went on for over a decade. Just us trusting the internet was putting the right audience in front of us. And my parents were always education. I've been a ad hoc professor and have trained and coached my whole life. So what we would do is we would, put together educational materials on any issuer, whatever it was. And I've always been one of those guys that tackle an industry that I didn't know about so I could learn about it and then I could pitch it, right? So then I could come up with ads and we would always be compliant. We'd have attorneys. We'd always go back and forth with compliance and the attorneys, and but to put that ad out there and to have people click on it and then follow it back to an educational webcast just like this, and to have them then say, I want to invest, was sort of a new day because before that we were doing road shows and events. We'd go to a
Mm.
hotel, rent out a
It
hotel.
was
Interestingly, in COVID, one new industry that I picked up was modular housing, so this was about 6 years ago, right about COVID time, I think, if my timing is right, and we're in a hotel room in Washington, and we have 200 people in a room, and we're pitching them, and this is in Seattle, yeah, Seattle. So, anyway, we're pitching all these people, and I come down to to the lobby because we're meeting investors in the lobby and I want to get coffee ready and everything like that. And there's nobody working in the hotel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So then all of a sudden I find somebody in the kitchen. I don't speak very good Spanish. She doesn't speak very good English. And we're trying to communicate.
Okay.
She grabs my arm and she goes, come. And then she takes me to a manager and she goes, we're closed till 4 o'clock. I go, what do you mean you're closed? She goes, yeah, just help yourself to anything you want. And I go, what? I said, and then I'm like looking out the window for like zombies and coyotes. Like, what's going on here?
What's going on there? Yeah.
And she goes, oh no, there's an outbreak. Everything is shutting down in the country. I'm like, how am I going to get home? I'm just thinking I have a car in the valet, like all these things. And so what was interesting is we had 4 more cities booked and we had to shut down
Oh,
shut
mm,
down and go straight to the internet, which I had done before. Like I had been on doing educational webcasts for well over a decade. I had a whole company that was doing that. So then we had to go to the internet in 5 days and start broadcasting, which is
wow.
interesting because everybody else was shut down too, and they were looking for content. So we started a broadcast, and we went from 200 people in a hotel room to 5,000 people on a single webcast net.
Wow.
5,000 people. And when we got the first investor, I'm like, oh my gosh, we could get investors without having to go face to face. Yeah. And I think that was the pivotal moment, the aha moment
Mhm.
that sort of flipped everything to say, you know what? You can build trust in a short amount of time. It would still take about 5 to 7 weeks for an investor to, have a couple meetings and get materials, do their due diligence, and then come back to it. But that was fascinating to just be part of that moment during COVID to say, you know what, we could do the majority of a cap raise when it was flipped around. Now, fast forward to today, we now are doing more and more road shows because it still pays off to meet people in
The
person.
people
And a
person.
lot of
Yeah.
times that trust is built faster than if you're just online like this. But
Mm,
so that's been a fascinating journey. And then I think I want to go back to your question on 2 things because, I have a whole data background,
mhm.
so that's my passion has always been data all the
Absolutely.
way back to Merrill Lynch because I watch data and money move together. So I'm like, if I follow this data and
They
this money, there's going to be more money somewhere, somehow. I don't know how. And so, so it sort of manifested and changed. And then what's interesting is when AI first came out, people were calling it AI, and I'm like, no, man, that's just automation. I've been doing that for 10 years. I mean,
10
that's like,
years.
Marketing automation. And I'm like, no,
Absolutely.
man, those are subroutines we wrote 20 years ago. I said, that's not AI. There's nothing thinking on its own.
It's
It's
on.
just
Yeah.
taking what we program and it's responding. So what's interesting is we get a lot of AI companies. And now, just so you guys hear this, FINRA and the SEC have like chief AI officers where they literally are, they're literally coaching us and teaching us that we have to validate a company, that if we're
Mhm.
doing a capital raise and they say they're an AI company, we have to validate that it's true AI and they own it. And
Yeah.
that's a really interesting thing for the listeners out there to hear because most people don't realize that that's the case.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, you know what? If we put AI is really hot right now. It's all over CNBC. I'm just going to put AI because we have a bunch of computer programs on our product and it's AI, right? We have
Put
fintech.
AI and get the
Yeah.
investors, right? Excited about it. I think that's a great segue. I want to ask you that is challenging. Like you said, previously AI is nothing but automation. But now, if you want to get investors at the door, then you have to mention AI somehow. So, how is there any tools that you're using, or still is more kind of a manual that your team is going validating? How do you have that process in place now?
Yeah, so we use a lot of chat prompt engineering and we'll use, LM and chat GPT. But what we do is we build out agents. And so I'm a big scorecard guy too. So, if anybody reads my book, I talk about scorecarding in there for yourself, to when you meet people to really be conscious about tracking them. And I have a sports background, so there's a lot of sports in there too. But what's interesting is in terms of the AI, we build agents. Hopefully everybody knows what an agent is, but it's like
Everyone.
building,
Mm,
taking the chat prompt engineering, which has 6 principles to it: task, context, exemplar, persona, format, and tone. That's where you teach
mm,
AI to operate like the company should operate, and that could be around compliance, or it also has the persona of how you and I are talking right now, so it feels more real, right?
That's
So
right.
then you build agents to do things like I had a deal that came in yesterday, and I had the AI agent analyze the deal based on a bunch of criteria we've pumped
Mhm,
in there, and then return how marketable or investable is that deal.
mhm.
And then what it does is it returns a score and gives 15 questions. Well, initially it gave like 50 questions that had to be answered. I go, you know what? 50 is too much.
It's
Give
too
me
much.
15 questions max of the most critical questions that are making this potentially non-investable. So then we send that back, and then the client sends it back. I give it to a registered rep, somebody with a Series 7, and have them analyze it because they know the industry, they know the client, and they validate those questions. And we forward it on to the client, then they send it back. And then we analyze it together. I put it through the analyzer again, and I score the deal. And it went
Mhm.
from like a 20% to a 70% investable based on their responses. So we
Response.
still have 30% to go, but that's what they engage with us and pay us to help them
Help
get it
them.
to closer to 90, in the 90s.
Yeah, since you brought the agentic and now with all this empowerment, do you think the private capital deployment can be more effective that you can reduce the risk and you can aim for the high growth industries without having the same risk that you guys had previously without these all agents?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to get faster and faster and faster. The challenge we have is making sure that people hear what I said about still having qualified humans validate it, right? Because at the end of the day, the resources are the websites and the data that we give it, the history of what it's been learning while we're programming it, right? And while it's working, and then still have it validated by a human. I don't think that's ever going away, but I think
Hmm.
what we're going to see is the fact that everybody needs to build skills to know how to use these tools and then know how to be enough of a specialist to validate the data that's coming out. If
Hmm.
we lose that and put all the trust in the information that's coming out, that's just sort of building a house on a false foundation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And you
There's
mentioned data, and you have a good background on data. I think we have saying garbage in, garbage out. You can have wonderful model, but say if your data is garbage, you'll get the garbage out. So all these cycle, I think data plays a huge role. Data is the new oil. So how do you go with this unstructured, messy data into clean this data and put into agents that it will give a good prediction. So how that cycle works.
Yeah, so, I think you need to either hire a company that knows enough about data, and it's interesting because the one thing we've been fighting for decades is data hygiene, right?
The hygiene.
And
Yeah.
validation, and that is one of the things that we still battle. I'm like, we have a good list, and I still spend time. I used to build call centers in one of my previous companies, so I still love putting on the headset, getting on getting on the phone a few hours a week and going through the
Certainly.
system, and it tells me how good or bad our data is. It's
Mm.
funny, I had a lady. I was in the call center yesterday, and I just jumped on the calls, and I'm a chief revenue officer, but I still jump on calls. So don't lose your work ethic out there, even if you get a better title, just so you can stay in touch with the technology and the data. But what I learned was, like somehow one of the entry people transposed a number, and I got a different number of the person I was calling. Instead of a male, I got a female, and then it was a completely different, but it turned out actually to be a very good call. So I got lucky, right? It wasn't like this lady yelling at me or anything, why are you calling me? Which I've gotten before in the past. But, it's just interesting. And so then it allows us to put systems and processes in place to make sure that if somebody's entering, off of, good old business cards, we come in from an event with a stack of business cards, we photograph them, we send them into the team, and they enter them. And then, if a number's transposed, we still now need a check and balance to make
Mm.
sure that the entry was done right and somebody's checking that data. And I still don't think we do enough of that. And we don't keep a relationship. This is a big deal because, I did CRM for a long time. We don't keep enough of a relationship with our database to understand if things have changed with what they need and what they want. And there's gold in that if you can build and create systems to just communicate with how they want to be communicated with,
Yeah.
and then also making sure the data gets updated in the system. And I'll tell you one example of this that's pretty cool is there's always something that I taught called preferential communication. So, how do you like to get your communication? Would you rather have a
Communication.
text, an email, or a call?
Me
What's
always text because I was like a more asynchronous guy. Get me a text. I'll get into that when I have time. Yeah, most
yeah.
probably now I'm not even answering calls at all. It's all text. I always put text email.
Yeah, so understand how your database wants you to communicate with them,
Hmm.
because otherwise they're just ignoring or they're going to opt out of what you're sending them if they don't want all those emails. And so if they
Hmm.
prefer a text, send them a text. If they want a phone call, I have a call center. Hey guys, can you call these people and tell them we have an event coming up? Or, email the folks and send them an invite. Or some people still like mail. Can you believe that? I know.
I think that's a great point. I want to come into that. And before that, even I was looking how you get all these data and temporal data. Okay, today's data is not yesterday's truth. Today's truth is totally different than yesterday, especially in finance. And your decision change. You have text, like you said, emails, phone calls. All these has to be integrated to get a clear picture. I was actually going through a lot of reading about that. Today, even some people like to get mails. My next question is: we all talk about this $1 trillion wealth transfer from baby boomers to the next generation. Still, some baby boomers like to get papers, read the paper, get the information, and get their mails. And the new generations is more like TikTok generations. They always get information from the social media and internet. How do you think deploying capital will change with this demographic change?
Yeah, good call. So it's funny, we have different teams for different asset classes, especially in the alternative investment space. We have crypto, real estate, even have a whiskey team. I'm part of that, by the way.
I saw some post. I was thinking to ask, "Hey, you are a risky person."
Yeah. So, but and sometimes in sports and like I mentioned, and things like that, and technology. So, what's interesting is people invest either by something they have a passion in, something they personal interest in, or something they know really well that they're going to be able to turn their money the way they want to turn their money. And we represent sort of two sides of the fence. We have a lot of institutional brokers. We have people that represent family offices and high net worth. And when I say institution, I'm talking about Wall Street institutional capital. And it's our responsibility then to pick the right investments to them, which means we really have to do our due diligence. On the other side, we represent issuers, companies, or funds that want to bring in capital. And we're like a matchmaker, right? So even though we use a lot of technology to do that, what we see that this family office has a big desire for real estate, but I had one that I thought only did real estate. And then I sat down, I had a conversation with them yesterday, and they said, "Oh no, we also like," because I started prodding a little more in a conversation. It took a dialogue to do that. And they said, "No, we also like medical and we like this and we like education." And they said, "Actually, we're going to have, call it 50 to 100 million coming up that we want to deploy. Bring us anything that's early stage in these three categories." And then what we do is we go into our system and we update the profile for that family office.
Mhm.
So I think that's what I mean. I think you have to take the time. As much as we have technology, you still need people that are willing to build the relationship and talk to people to find out the pattern. And so what we're seeing in a change in pattern is, yes, more technology is being used. People will tell you that they have a preference, but what's interesting is find out more about them as people and not just how they deploy capital,
Yeah,
because you'll learn some things.
yes.
It was crazy. This one family office has a doctor. It's his family office, and found out because he's a cardiac doctor and he had a cardiac situation that all of a sudden now he's the owner of a $1 billion cardiac, company that helps people heal.
Mm.
And I would have never known that had I not gone into the conversation, because what they'll ask you is, what do you know, how can I help you? What do you need capital for? What projects are you working on? And you have that sort of both side dialogue. And I do cover that in the book, where I tell people there's reciprocity, right? First, find out what other people want, update your CRM so you know exactly what they're looking for. And then when you have something to invest in that's been checked out, it goes through the due diligence, checks all the boxes, background checks and everything, and you know it's a good investment. Now you can easily go find the people that are deploying capital in that very space, no matter
Space.
what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
Mm.
and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I still
Absolutely.
think there's always going to have to be that human element of relationships. And one of the things, before we run out of time too, I want to dig into the real world assets and the tokenization, because that is one thing
Yeah, I
that is
want to ask you
changing.
about that. Let's dig deep into this because I'm actually a crypto and blockchain person. I have seen that concept like you tokenize this real world asset. Tell me about it and what do you think about the future?
Yeah, I have three amazing issuers that we represent in the space, and they're a little bit different. So I have Fernhill, which is a public company. It's FERN is the trading symbol. But what's interesting about Fernhill is they will take a capital raise that I'm doing. Let's say there's a $200,000 minimum, it's a $10 million raise, or a $20 million raise, or $100 million raise, and people have to be accredited and need 200 million. Well, Fernhill will create what's called a SPV, a special purpose vehicle, allocate $10 million out of that raise, put it out to their market in the public market, and allow the minimum to go as low as a couple $1,000s or $5,000. So if you can't afford the minimum, you now could get into that alternative investment in another way with tokenization. And they have a real world asset platform, and with their tokenization, you can even use cash. So you can use cash, IRAs, tokens, whatever you want, Bitcoin,
Right.
whatever.
Mm.
And then another one is liquid mercury. That's like an engine that's used by, if you look up liquid mercury, they're used by so many companies like Coinbase and everybody else if you look on their website. And they're a marketplace platform and a trading platform for real world assets. So I
Oh,
have
nice.
crazy things that I collect, like, the PBR is bucking bulls, in terms of the bull riding you see on TV. So I'm
Mm.
like, hey, why couldn't you have fractional ownership in this real world asset as a bull? We'll create an LLC and have one, two, three, five bulls in there. And then everybody else can invest with
Invest
tokens
on it.
in this
Yeah.
bull, right?
Mm.
So that's
Absolutely.
the change. It's almost like anything that is a true real world. I have a part of a water company, and that's a real world asset. So it's water coming out of the ground, and people can invest in that
Invest.
real world asset with tokenization.
Question there. So when you tokenize these assets, the real time value of the token, for example, that water system, you tokenize it, people invest, but now you have to match with the real time value of that. Is there any plumbing for that, or
Yeah,
how does
there's
that?
there's that's a great question. And it depends on what it is, but there's market indicators, just like there is with stock market, as they're
Mhm.
checking the market, the demand, the supply, and they're in real time, depending on the trading system, like Liquid Mercury does this, they'll keep that real world asset in check so the market price is adequate. And it's
Okay.
supply and demand, man. It always goes back. Whatever
Basic.
platform you use, make sure it's keeping an eye on supply and demand.
Yeah, absolutely. We have only 2 minutes. I want to get one thought from you. Like we have all these amazing technology, like you said, not only LLMs, education is changing, biotech's changing, self-driving coming in. It will be a totally different world in few years. How we envision after maybe another 10, 20 years, how these technology evolve and how it will benefit as a world.
Yeah, I think I'd like to believe that we can always keep it real. You know what I mean? So no matter
Mm.
what, at the end of the day, we don't lose that human element in the relationship. I would like to believe that as humans, as a human race, we have that amount of intelligence to make sure that we're always in relationship, human to human, and not necessarily always machine to machine. I mean, there's a lot of great machine to machine relationships out there, but I still think we need to keep the human element in check.
Absolutely.
And maybe
Dean,
that's just because I'm an old guy.
I think I even believe that. I have three boys, so now I'm believing it more. So, Dean, can you show us your book, and I will put the instructions in the video.
Yeah,
And
just type my name into Amazon. This is the first book. I have 2 more in the works, and they're gonna be great. They're gonna be great. You're gonna love them. So, gonna
absolutely.
help you raise capital.
Yeah. This is incredible conversation. Thanks for joining. I mean, thanks for your time. Let's see whether we can have another session sometime later.
Absolutely. We'll do an update session.
Yeah. Thanks, Dean. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all the listeners out there. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This conversation is not an investment or business advice. Thank you for listening. See you in next episode.